Here's the other quote by Lindsey Graham. Putin knows no one wins a nuclear exchange. If he ordered a strike on the United States, a general would shoot him in the head.
Well, first of all, I don't see any evidence that anybody in Moscow wants to order a nuclear strike, so I think it's a dumb idea. I think the Russians are far more worried about what we may or may not do. I mean, we have nuclear-armed submarines off their coast. They detected one even before this invasion began, and they were horrified by it. They've also seen us fly B-52s and potentially nuclear-armed bombers right along the edge of their airspace in the air defense identification zone.
That's right.
We've conducted exercises in the Baltic, 50 nautical miles from St. Petersburg. So they're used to this, and they're uncomfortable with it, and they've asked us to stop it. And I've frequently asked, when I was looking into these matters over in DOD, I said, well, how would we react if the Russians held a major naval exercise off the coast of New England within 50 nautical miles of Boston? We would not be very happy about that. So it's an exercise in hypocrisy here. There's no question about it. But there's more to it than just the defense industrial complex. There are key figures behind the scenes who think this is an opportunity to destroy Russia and its leadership. And they're wrong. And I go back to Marco Rubio, who finally got something right and said, Russia is not Iraq. And we need to guard against the assumption that that is the case, because too many people seem to think it is. And I think Senator Lindsey Graham is another one. Oh, we need to stop worrying about Mr. Putin, these Russians. What can they do? Well, you'd be really surprised.
Well, Graham also said, I'm calling for the crushing of the Russian economy. Putin is a war criminal. He is no longer a legitimate leader. It is time for us to get him gone. You know, I wouldn't call Putin any more of a war criminal than George W. Bush.
The key thing here is in the latest polls that were sent to me from contacts in Poland that got these out of Russia, he has a 70% approval and support rating for everything he is doing in Ukraine, inside Russia.
Again,
that certainly exceeds the approval rating of the current president of the United States.
It did not exceed the approval rating of George W. Bush when he launched the Afghan war. He had an 88% of the American people believe this little daddy's boy, born on third base and thought he had a home run, a little nothing of a clown. We're going to get that guy Osama bin Laden, dead or alive. And people swallowed that crap.
Yeah, the Bombs Away Club in the United States has a lot of members. We also know from experience, though, that the enthusiasm for this sort of thing diminishes over time. I think the good news is that right now, if you look at the current polls, people are almost universally opposed to the notion of a war with Russia. Now, they may say, I support sanctions, I support harsh measures, whatever. But if you press them, do you want a war with Russia? You get almost universally the answer no. That's helpful. But it's very tough when you're dealing with this media that seems to be perfectly aligned. This is all reminiscent of Noam Chomsky in his book, Manufactured Consent. Go back to Vietnam. You had a similar circumstance. The non-existent, what was it, the incident offshore at the outset of the Vietnam War in 1960.
Gulf of Tonkin,
Yes, the Gulf of Tonkin, it never happened.
Never happened. Never happened. I wrote about it in one of my books, Trends 2000, back in 1996. And one of the generals disgusted with what happened and the big lie about it. Again, you know, remember the Maine?
Yes.
They've been doing this forever.
Yes.
They've been doing
Randolph
it forever.
Hearst would love this.
Yeah. And again, the other book, and the other, when you said who's behind it, I think Smedley Butler's book, War's a Racket, you know, the banksters, you know, the Wall Street guys, the United Fruit back in the day, you know, one after another. I mean, that's who it is. And now, again, as I keep saying, you know, it's about oil. Oh, and there was, you know, it's never changed. It's
Well, we
never
found an
changed.
opponent in Russia that cannot be bullied.
No, no, no. So tell me before we leave, what do you see as the outcome of this?
I think there are two possibilities. If a ceasefire is called within the next couple of weeks, Zelensky sits down, I think those terms from the Russians about Crimea, the Donbass, and neutrality could be accepted, and you would have a Ukrainian construct that looks pretty much as it did, minus Crimea, of course, and these two republics, Luhansk and Donetsk, and neutrality. If that does not happen, if Zelensky continues to stonewall, then I think you'll end up with a different construct. It will end with Kyiv or Kiev in Russian hands, a boundary along the Dnieper River until you reach the south, and the Russians will move on Odessa and essentially turn what remains of Ukraine in the west into a landlocked country.
Oh boy! All right.
That's one of those two things will happen.
Okay.
But the notion that suddenly everything falls apart, the Russians give up and say, "Oh, what a mistake! Wish we had stayed home." No.
Yeah, I agree with you. And by the way, the other thing about Crimea, as you said, it's been part of Russia forever. Khrushchev, when he turned over Ukraine, and the other thing too is that they never talk about is that they had an election in Crimea, and over 80% of the people turned out to vote. It was internationally monitored, and over 95% of the people voted to exit Ukraine. But we won't talk about that. And the other thing that they keep lying about is they say Russia invaded Crimea. And as you well know, what did they have? Their fleet there, and they had been there forever?
They conquered the Crimea in 1776.
Yep. So under the rules that they're saying, I guess we should give back California, Arizona, Texas, and all the other land we stole back to Mexico.
Yeah, I'm sure that there are plenty of Mexicans down in Mexico City who would agree with that. Of course, the historical record shows that at the time we took those lands, if you will, from the Mexicans, there were about 110,000 human beings living in them, most of whom were so-called Native Americans. We filled it with millions of people very rapidly, and we transformed it into civilization. So I think it's somewhat different. But nonetheless, your point is well taken. And hopefully we don't end up with a government, and you never know with the left, that decides to do that. That would be frightening.
Yeah, well, you know, the other funny thing, too, by the way, before we say goodbye, is that how they're making a big deal at McDonald's and Kentucky Fried Chicken and Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola. American symbols are moving out of Russia. I say they should force them to stay in Russia so the people can eat all that crap and get too fat to fight.
Well, remember the French fries.
Oh, I forgot.
We had all these incensed members because the French would not go along with our intention to invade Iraq.
Right. Freedom fries.
Well, that went away.
Yeah.
This will go away too.
All right.